Okay, I was told that we're not going to be penalized for that. We're gonna have an extended time. So anyway, so I've introduced Aurora and then Leloy. I actually haven't finished Leloy, but would you mind if I already introduce Pat? Okay, Pat is a trauma journalist and former investigative reporter for the Philippine news company Rappler. Her debut book, Some People Need Killing, a memoir of murder in my country, an account of the Philippine drug war, was hailed as, quote, a journalistic masterpiece by the New Yorker magazine. She also has, all of them have events here, so you can catch them at their own individual events. The book was released in October 2023 by Random House, was a New York Times top 10 best books of the year. It lists all the allocates, Pat. It has since won the NYPL Helen Bernstein Book Award. She lives in Manila? Period. All right. Maria.
Okay, Karina asked me to talk to you about the way technology is manipulating us. So I'll start with that, but I'm going to try to compress it a little bit more. So this way, I want to talk to these guys, right? I'm going to stay to the side because let's pull up the slides. Facts, truth, trust. You've heard me say this over and over. Is this the right place to be? I can go here. Facts, truth, trust, right? From the Nobel, from 2016, I've always said that without facts, you can't have truth. Without truth, you can't have trust. Without these three, we don't have a shared reality. We can't solve existential problems like climate change. We can't have journalism. We can't have democracy. But here's the biggest problem today, and I'll start with that. It is impunity, right? There were some law students, some people who are lawyers in the audience, but the biggest problem is impunity, whether it is in the physical world, where we have Putin and Netanyahu and Sudan, the men, they're all men actually, women, and in the virtual world, where we have the CEOs of the largest tech companies using the exact same tactics in the virtual world, right? And in order to do that, the mother of all battles for all of us is how to tell fact from fiction. Because if you don't have that, then you can't organize. And the biggest challenge for civil society is to be able to figure out what civic engagement means in our democracies in the age of exponential lies. So let me quickly go through this, right? Everyone is talking about artificial intelligence. For the guys who I met from Heidelberg, right? You have all this tech and everybody wants to be innovative. But guys, artificial intelligence is neither artificial nor intelligent. And it's been around since 1956, literally. And it was a marketing term. The hype that we are living through that is bringing tens of billions of dollars. And I'll show you what it's done. And essentially the one that's being funded right now, the offshoot, because there's some good generative AI, like DeepMind, that is used for biosynthetic engineering, right? But what are we living with? Toxic surveillance model. Is there anyone here who is not on social media? Okay, let me show you. Oh, 2 of you, 3. All right. I know, but the problem is that you're going to be alone because the rest of us, the rest of us. So let me just quickly go through that, right? If you're on Facebook, this is the first generation. Everyone who has an account, machine learning comes in and makes a model of you that knows you better than you know yourself. Replace the word model with clone, right? That's more than 2,300 big data sets that's connected to your relationships and your purchasing if you've purchased, and your dating if you're dating on Facebook. So machine learning and AI, then all of our clones are taken by AI, and that's the master load database for micro-targeting. Micro-targeting is not the old advertising. Micro-targeting takes your weakest moment to a message and sells it to a company or a country. That's social media, right? By design, lies spread 6 times faster from an MIT 2018 study. And that's before Elon Musk bought Twitter and turned it to X. Generative AI. What happened with generative AI? there are different branches of it, but the branch of generative AI that has created the enshittification of the internet and made it worse. Cory Doctorow word, right? Where you can't tell. I will show you what we've lived through. LLMs take all of everything written on the internet. Every news organization is scraped. And they think that giving it more data will make it more accurate. That hasn't been the case. Right now, the commercial language models are 16% accurate at best, 79% errors at worst, right? So 16% error, 79%. Those are the things. And really quickly, I'll take you through. This is like a slot machine, right? Because if you look at that, it's like a casino. You pull down the slot machine, you may or may not win, but because it costs you so little to pull it down, you pull it down again. It's mildly addictive. It's why you also binge watch Netflix. Quick repeatability, and here's the impact on all of us, right? This is personal. Every one of us is changed slightly. Yuri Andropov, the former KGB chair, former head of the Soviet Union, said, disinformatia is like cocaine. You take it once or twice, you're okay. But if you take it all the time, you become an addict. And I hate to put that next to the drug war that we in the Philippines have lived through. But look at what's happening to us online, right? And in groups, we behave differently. And when it's online, you times 4. And when it rewards lies laced with fear, anger, and hate, pumping us full of toxic sludge, it rewards the worst of humanity. So, facts, truth, trust. What's happened? We have shortened attention spans. We have the Surgeon General of the United States wrote about some of this stuff, right? The epidemic of loneliness, tribalism. How did that happen? Because one algorithm for growth, this is in How to Stand Up for a Dictator, it's the way, if you're fed a friend of a friend, you're more prone to click it to grow your network, which grows the platform. But in the Philippines, what we saw in 2016 is the friends of friends algorithm. If you're pro-Duterte, you move further right. If you're anti-Duterte, you move further left. And over time, this chasm grew. Replace Duterte with Orban, with Trump. Replace him with any of the populists today, and you'll see this. What else is happening? Doxing, dogpiling, bullying. And then the impact. Do you still have agency? In 2024, there were more than 74 major elections. And what we saw was agency being taken away because of the push of the crowd and information warfare. This is from VDEM in March this year. 72% of the world is now under authoritarian rule. 72%. We are electing illiberal leaders democratically, right? This has happened before. Germany knows this. And here's the part that is real. Online violence is real world violence. And the two fracture lines in every society that's pounded open, gender and race. I'll just show you some instances. You guys know this. It is broken down by demographics and by class, right? This is the same network that attacked journalists, all of us probably at this, that attacked opposition politicians. I'm going to show you some of the things I lived through, and Patricia has gotten some of this, but Patricia refuses to look at it. These are some of the attacks. I was getting an average of 90 hate messages per hour. I'm not corrupt, so it was really hard to attack me. So what they did was, I have dry skin. I have eczema. So they made my skin look really bad. And they called me scrotum face. This was all over Facebook, Twitter, right? And the dehumanizing part. If this is happening to you, sound the alarm, because dehumanization is a prelude to violence. Around this time period when Pia Renada, when our young reporters were getting attacked in a dehumanizing way, we increased our security, right? And the thing is, it took almost a year before all of this stuff disappeared. But the funny thing is, not so funny, look again, my skin is better than that. But But what happened? Look how creative they are, right? So they took it down, but they started being so creative that scrotum face still continued. And then when they couldn't do that anymore, they started to code it SF, scrotum face. You live through it and you just keep going, right? But this is not normal. This is designed to use free speech to pound you to silence. I'm not alone. This is a 2022 UNESCO report. And if you look at this, this is by both ICFJ and UNESCO. Howie's going to take a photo. Wait. Oh my God, sorry guys. I'm going to go one more time. You got it? I'll send you the slides. 73%, so gender, remember gender, 73% of women journalists experienced online abuse. 25% of those received threats of physical violence. You guys remember when Miriam Santiago said, I eat death threats for breakfast. And of that 25%, 20% had been attacked or abused in the real world, right? So online violence is real world violence. Let me take you to generative AI. I'm going to need audio for this. This was the first deep fake that I had gotten. Many prominent figures in the Philippines now get them all the time. They've gotten significantly better. I just want to show you this one so you can see, right? So a Russian scam network. We dug deep and we found that it was using this. Let me play it.
Today, I want to share one of my big secrets. What helped me to become a successful person is to quickly jump into new opportunities without any hesitation. And right now, my number one source of income is a new automated cryptocurrency trading program. This is the biggest opportunity I've seen in my entire life to make a big fortune quickly. You can invest 14,500 Philippine pesos and earn from 120,000 monthly without much labor. I urge everyone to check this out before the banks shut down this platform.
Hindi po boses ko yon. Hindi ko boses yon. And, you know, a CEO from a prominent company, a large company, called me and said, what is it? Where will I invest? Please be careful. Now there are deep fakes of me telling people with diabetes to throw away their insulin. Do not throw away your insulin, right? So you can't tell fact from fiction. Companies are being, the fraud scale is off the scale. So this is what we did in Rappler. We took what we did as investigative journalists, and now I can tell you because I only have one case left out of the 11 that were filed. We splintered off another company when the government tried to shut us down. And thank you, Philippine government, for having me here today. So we created this company called Nerve. And this is how we did it. You know, like, as we did investigative journalism, we did a data and landscape review. We did natural language processing to do big data, structured and unstructured. Then we used data forensics. What does that mean? We pulled down, we could show you the networks of the clusters of messages and the networks that spread the messages. I used to track terrorist networks, right? These companies know what are the networks of disinformation? And they could take it down. They don't because they make money out of it. This data psychology, we used ocean analysis, but the data is publicly available data. So we can do that to find out a narrative strategy to counter, content strategy and campaigns, and then distribution. Remember, it's not enough to create the journalism or your art. You have to also distribute it. Those are the two main things. Let me show you three things. From what we learned in the Philippines, Nerve, our second company, spun off, and we've gone to these different countries around the world. And I'm going to show you the way disinformation works. How influence operations normalize lies. When they seed it, and then they opportunistically amplify it, when they pound it open. So look at the narrative, right? Something simple from 2014, the narrative that was used to annex Crimea. The seeding already creates the echo chamber reinforcement because of social media. And then it's opportunistically amplified and hit during crisis. And then You have a global network. It is here in Germany. Guys, they work together, a nervous system around the world, a malign actor amplification, and then it continues until the lie becomes fact, until it is normalized, right? And you cannot tell fact from fiction. So it shifts the public discourse, and it begins all over again. Why are people commodifying us and commodifying our data? Let me show you an example here in Europe. And this was one of our most recent reports. Back. Who's from the UK? Anyone from the UK? Southport riot, right? A mass stabbing on July 29th, 2024, and then lies flooded. And what happened when lies flooded? Well, it said it was a Muslim asylum seeker who allegedly arrived illegally by boat. It's not true, right? But the fact check doesn't spread as fast as the lies. So looking at the Southport riot, this is what happened. Again, look at the data. It's pounded anti-immigrant narratives before, during, and after the Southport riot, the echo chamber reinforcement, the crisis exploitation, and the malign actor amplification. Online violence is real-world violence. The other thing we found here, by the way, and we released this report, I believe, Elon Musk played a critical role in helping the violence spread, right? Okay. Normalized, right? So people believe the lies. Let's go to the Philippines and China. Kasi how many have discussed China? So look at Chinese propaganda and how it's increased year to year. After Russian disinformation, Iranian, China's information operations shifted. It moved away from great leader to the same exact thing. These are clusters of the narratives, and then those are the amplified. You can see how they ratcheted up year by year, and the propaganda increases at the time when we're at most risk for actual warfare, right? Remember when in June, when there was a clash. And let me show you, this is the fun part. What happened over time? Because it's deeply connected to local politics. So in 2018, we began to see the pro-China network form. And it came in through those three accounts that we saw earlier, which are familiar to many Filipinos. But by 2019, it began to be more coordinated. And it was pro-Duterte, pro-Marcos working together, defense, SCS, interest groups on the other side. We have the linkers. All this data is available on Rappler. 2020, the pandemic. Horrific when it moved online, because we all moved online. And you can see that it increased. The circles are eigenvector centrality. The larger the circle, the greater its power to spread. But what happened in 2021? The networks began to shift. Why? Because President Marcos and Vice President Duterte began to fight. You can see it online, and by 2022, they separated. This is what we can see in the virtual world, and it is being used to manipulate us, right? Pro-China. By the way, Filipinos, I won't tell. Now you're going to have to read the rest of it on Rappler. I'm ending, and then, I'm going to end with 3 solutions, because there are solutions. But right now, and you heard the Minister of Culture here talk about digital colonialism. Surveillance capitalism is atrocious. We should not be in a system where your data is manipulated against you. And all the digital colonialism, when an editor makes one call on one story, it's very different when an algorithm does it for hundreds of millions, right? Think about it like that. Biased and oppressive AI systems, I'll show you some of that. Exploitation of data workers, the Philippines is one of those things, one of the first content moderation countries. The top 2 that were named in 2017 was the Philippines and Poland, Manila and Warsaw. And on generative AI, we in the global South clean up what you in the global North use, right? And then the environmental damage. My gosh, one of the 5 big one major company said that it would need 250 nuclear power plants to power its growth in generative AI. So that would be incredible. And then you've already heard me talk about the destruction of agency and democracy. So here are the three things Dimitri and I rolled out in November 2022. How do we reclaim our rights? The first, stop surveillance for profit. This was signed by more than 300 Nobel laureates, civil society groups. We focused on Europe because the US was nowhere to be found. Stop surveillance for profit, number one. Number two, stop coded bias. Because if you are a woman or LGBTQ+, if you are an ethnic minority, if you are brown or black, if you're marginalized in the real world, you're further marginalized online. And finally, the last one, journalism as an antidote to tyranny. How do you rebuild trust? This is my solutions, my last few slides, right? Because I don't want you to leave you depressed and our next generation. Although Patricia has great powers to depress us. Okay, how do you rebuild trust? These are the three things that we use in Rappler from the very beginning. I say we build communities of action. This is in 2011. And the food we feed our communities is journalism. And I'll take you through journalism continues in the Philippines. Despite everything, right? And I actually, when I see what's happening in America, I used to rail that we didn't stand up enough, but you know what? Pinoys were so much more courageous. Sorry, playing to the crowd yata, no. So the journalism continues, but look what we did. This is for community, right? What we did is because the platforms actually spread lies faster and encourages the worst of us, how about we organize ourselves online? 150 different groups coming together, 16 news groups fact-checking. We did a data pipeline across the mesh layer. So those fact checks, they don't spread. But what we did with 116 civil society groups, the church was part of this. We said every member has to share one fact check a day. And we gave 5 options, so you can target it, right? But not targeting the way micro-targeting. One fact check a day, you share it, and you share it with emotion, but you do not use anger. Because you don't want to be a monster to fight a monster. And what we found was that inspiration spreads as fast as anger, right? The goodness, I believe humanity is basically good. But if you live in a system that encourages the worst, which is what our public information ecosystem has become, then you can't bring out the good, right? The research, the universities, we gave them the data, and every week someone released it. Because journalists, news organizations, this is happening in the West now, but we were under such attack that we weren't strong enough. You didn't believe us. So academics came in. This is civil society working together. And finally, the last layer, legal groups. And they protected us, right? Let me show you the way it broke up. This is the Philippine public information ecosystem. The news groups tended to cluster together. If you're following a news groups, you clustered together. The artists clustered together. Activists also tended to cluster together. And the one I love, faith. Grabe, very powerful siya. And that clustered together. And then around this time, Pope Francis called us. That was really cool. Anyway, let me show you the moment we took over the center of the public information ecosystem. The blue are our partners, the orange are boundary spanners, the yellow is the spread. We took over the center of the public information ecosystem with boring facts, but it required that we organize ourselves, right? Finally, let me end with this. And Germany knows this better than anyone because Germany built all of its government websites on the Matrix protocol. It isn't just the big tech companies that abdicated responsibility for protecting the public. Democratic governments also failed to protect the public in the virtual world. And what happened was, I got tired of begging big tech to stop spreading lies, to anchor on facts. And so this is what we did. We built on the Matrix protocol France and Germany's government websites are all there. It's secure, decentralized, and open source, meaning anyone can use it. 150 million addressable users. It's been around since 2014. And look at who is using it right now. The government of France, the German armed forces, the ministry, governments and military and intelligence. What about us, poor people? How can we protect ourselves? How can we protect our data? That was why we built the Matrix Protocol chat app. And this is the Matrix chat app, and we've invited all Filipino news groups to join us on this. We just a few weeks ago brought in 3 independent news groups, plus the Philippine Press Institute, which represents more than 60 news groups. What that means is, if this is Rappler, and this is, let's use Howie, GMA, right? If this is Rappler and GMA, and Patricia follows Rappler, Howie follows GMA, Howie and Patricia can talk to each other without these groups ever exchanging their data. You're secure, right? So I'll end with just this. Try it. It's been out since December 2023. We ran our midterm elections on it. We can create the journalism, but what if you're infected? What if you don't believe in facts, right? So we need a public interest tech stack. If it isn't this, let's build something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. That was powerful. Somehow you were both grim and hopeful at the same time. I don't know how you managed that. And you know, I noticed, Maria, that despite all the harassment you went through, you never stopped smiling all those years. So thank you for helping maintain our collective morale. It was really hard. It's really hard during those years. All of us can attest. Anyway, our format is, so she's giving the main presentation, and our esteemed colleagues here on the stage will be interacting or reacting to her presentation, asking questions, and we'll have that kind of conversation. And then we're going to open up the floor for questions from the audience. Aurora Almendral.
Okay, so this is a departure from your presentation, but something we were just talking about before this on the stage. And so, like you, I'm Filipina American. I spent the last few years working for a legacy U.S. news organization. And since Trump became president, we've seen legacy media organizations capitulate to attacks by the regulatory state, which is something that we also saw in the Philippines. And just as perniciously, we've seen signs of them perform acts of anticipatory obedience to this hostile government. And they're adjusting their editorial decision-making to avoid being singled out for more targeted attacks, often by way of their corporate owners. So my question is, what lessons can American journalists like myself draw from the Philippines? First, to keep ourselves from despairing. And secondly, how do we chart a path for moving forward at a time when the journalism industry is weakened and under threat from so many angles, including from within?
Wow. Okay, we start with the easy question first. I think the first is, it's even harder now because the business model of news, of journalism is dying. It's dead. Advertising has been co-opted by big tech as well, right? 85 to sometimes in some countries up to 90% is going to the tech platforms. In America, what we're seeing, and this was, believe it or not, the line that was drawn by Americans on free speech was Jimmy Kimmel, right? Jimmy Kimmel. And when that happened, we began to see what happened. Sinclair, which is a local television station, very large, as well as Nexstar. They said they were not going to run Jimmy Kimmel, and they decided that they were going to take it off the air. But CBS changed its mind within a day, right? But who were the ones who came in? It was the comedians. It was Jon Stewart who asked me, we went on, right? But having said that, here's what to watch out for: massive consolidation. and it is consolidation towards power. So I mentioned Nexstar because they're about to buy Tegna, which is again another cable group, and Sinclair is also up for sale. If these things are pulled together, that may be like Fox or Newsmax times 4. And then here's your other part. TikTok is being sold. Larry Ellison is part of the group that is buying this. So massive media consolidation that will change it. Advice for journalists. Don't wait. Like right now, what we've learned in the Philippines is that when you voluntarily give up your rights, it's very hard to claw them back. You start from strength while you're still strong. And sometimes reporters will think you can't do anything. I mean, it's interesting because CBS has a new news head, Barry Weiss. The first time an American news group is being headed by an opinion writer, right? She's not we journalists have our own little hierarchy. Reporter wins, but opinion writers, we like them, but their opinion, they don't run the news group, right? So anyway, that's a first for America. And it's like in the Philippines, I've just learned that it's hard for American media to write about American media. So I guess this is what we did in Rappler. The older folks, we let our younger reporters talk to each other. Like literally, now I can say all of these things because we've moved from hell to purgatory, diba? We have. So what we did is like the reporters all got together and they worked together in different ways. We got banned from the palace by 2018, but we kept reporting, and some of that reporting came from people who were our competition. Here's the thing: when it is a battle for facts, news organizations are all on the same side, right? So there's still time, is what I'm saying. The same way we need civil society to help. But Americans have to stop being deer in headlights. By the way, there is a No Kings protest today, right? So I don't know what it's looking like. But that's, game isn't over yet, but close.
Very much in a state of shock, and it seems worse than the Philippines.
Yeah, it is a little bit worse. Kasi may DNA tayo, di ba? I'm so sorry. Let me speak in English. We have, and Leloy can tell you the history. Our DNA, 1986 was not so long ago, right? So we have something different. But America, just to remind you, women didn't get the right to vote till the 20s, and Jim Crow laws, race, did not go away until the 60s. So it was pounded open by information operations. It's inciting the worst of us. So don't give up. Well, maybe you can go up. Come home.
Maybe I'll just go where it's over already.
She's coming home next year, she told me. All right, now we have Lisandro Claudio is actually a doctor, okay? Dr. Lisandro Claudio. He's a history professor at Berkeley, but he's also written for Rappler. He wears many hats. We call him Leloy. Leloy.
Yeah.
It's our Tim Snyder.
Oh my God, thank you. Not worthy, Maria. But I can really relate to Aurora because I was doing work for Rappler during the Duterte administration.
Very courageous.
And then I moved to the US, and I'm now in a university during the second Trump administration. So I feel like I'm going through it twice, and I don't know what's worse. But I want to ground my questions in a very special place, and that is the 3-story office building called Estancia. So.
Sure.
Estancia is a beautiful place. It's beside the mall. It's a 3-story office building, and it is the home of Rappler. And I've had many great experiences in Estancia. One great experience was we were doing the State of the Nation coverage for Duterte. I think it was 2017 or 2018. And that was the first time Duterte publicly threatened Rappler. And your reaction was to first do this. And then your next reaction, I remember this clearly, you straightened your spine. And so I wonder if you can remind us about that moment. And then a second question about Estancia. I was watching a documentary about QAnon. I don't know if you know this. So QAnon is supposedly run by this family called the Watkins family. And then I realized as I was watching it, their office in the Philippines looks extremely familiar. And it's not just that it's in the Philippines, it's in Estancia.
No.
I think so. I'm almost 100% sure because if you watch it, I'm like 80%
You
sure.
can't operate on almost, Leloy.
I mean, let's watch. We should watch it together, Maria, and we can verify it. But the fact is, like, either they were really close or maybe a floor underneath you while you were doing your work. So, those two questions.
Nakakatakot siya. I said he's scary. On the first question, I think, and if, in 2016, I warned that what was happening to us was coming for you. Because I think the thing that tech did well is it proved that regardless of geography, culture, language, race, regardless of all of that, human beings behave the same way. We can be manipulated in the same way. So on your question, I think the thing that when we were there, I remember you were there, right? I never thought I'd be arrested, frankly, right? And this is my 40th year as a journalist. When I was arrested, I was in shock. That was probably the time when I was most in shock. But at that point, I was like, bring it. Boy, you have no idea what can happen when you say bring it, right? But that is our DNA, because part of the reason we created Rappler was independence. Literally, in our shareholders agreement, our shareholders, if you want to invest in Rappler, you have to sign away everything to the person running the news, right? So whether that's me or the next executive editor, this is Glenda Gloria, all of those decisions are made by journalists. And a decision made by a journalist is very different from a decision of a person who's doing things for profit. We need money for sure, because we need to survive, but profit isn't the main motive. On the second question, sana hindi totoo, but I will say QAnon, every single massive fraud, especially on the internet, has had a link to the Philippines, right? Do you guys know Mega Upload? Mega Upload, he's German actually. Do you remember this? From the Germans here. Mega Upload used to be like it's a way to get pirated stuff. He was married to a Filipina. and that was also in the Philippines. So we had a lot of internet fraud, and it just moved. The groups that were doing scam emails for Hotmail moved to the internet, and then moved to doing massive troll armies. So it's there. It's a cottage industry. But we fight it. So how do you fight it? Germany's led this as well. You came up with GDPR. The European Union has the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act. We need laws for safety. It isn't a freedom of speech issue. So please, it's not a free speech issue. The stuff that we live through, they shouldn't be what journalists have to live through in order to do our jobs. Nakakatakot si Patricia when she
Thank you.
smiles.
All right, Patricia.
I'm so charming and harmless, guys. You used to say, Maria, that social media would save the world.
Yes, I believed in it.
Right now, though, you're saying that journalism can end tyranny. But we are operating in an industry that is contracting. We don't have the budgets. We don't have the time to investigate, because at the end of the day, journalism is expensive, particularly if people don't think they have to pay for it. So is the sort of journalism that can be produced now the sort of journalism that you're serving up as an end to tyranny? Are we able to still do this, and how are you going to fund it?
This is my reporter who would spend a month on one story. Yeah. I mean, Patricia did the drug war, right? Which is traumatizing in itself. But if you haven't read her book, it's the most narrative. It's lyrical. It's lyrical, talking about death, right? So I love that Patricia's asking me a money question. Look, the standards and ethics of journalism are important. And whatever form it takes, those standards and ethics anchor us, because ultimately the mission of journalism is always there. How do we fund it? You saw Nerve. Nerve, when we splintered it off, is now 30 to 40% of the revenue of Rappler, right? We have to move and shift. This is a time, literally, it is creative destruction. And in 2021 at the Nobel lecture, I said, we're standing on the rubble of the world that was. If you agree to that, then you will begin to look at the world with new eyes and find new ways to create, right? So nerve is one, but the other part is Germany has public broadcasters, right? There's a big chunk of the German budget that is there. The EU values this, but public broadcasting and public interest investigations are not going to survive the assault of technology. And that's the reason why we need this. Last, I will say this. The Norwegian Nobel Commission said that journalism is necessary for democracy. So I'm quoting them because I believe this is the case. I know, for example, right now, the kinds of anti-corruption protests that are happening in the Philippines, that's because the journalists are doing the investigative reports that are giving people the facts so they can hold power to account. And I'll say one thing, right? I'm actually optimistic about the Philippines and the global South because for so long we've talked about colonialism. Well, what is our vision for our world today, right? The global South, Brazil in particular, is leading in the fight against President Trump, right? President Lula in Brazil. And Brazil, Chile, and Uruguay and Spain brought 20 countries together around the UN. They called it Democracia Siempre, and they're pushing for information integrity, for democratic institutions, and sustainable development. And I hope the Philippines and Indonesia join. I hope our part of the world joins. Because what does leadership, now that we are in a place where we can have a vision for the world today, will the global South actually step up, right? I hope so. We got more than 44 Nobel laureates to support Democracia Siempre, and including the Dalai Lama, right? So I am optimistic. I mean, look, Rappler is still here, GMA is still here, we're still here. I mean, where is Duterte?
All right. Thank you. On that happy note, we will open up the floor for questions from the audience. All right, where's the microphone, please? Okay, I see a hand over here, and then there's another hand in the front row.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Can we ask people to identify themselves and perhaps where they're from, where they live, etc.?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Anne Roberts. I live in the UK, but I'm originally from the Philippines. Hello. Is that enough of a background?
Yeah, just fine.
Fab. Okay.
Hi, Anne.
Hello. Yes, first of all, thank you very much for that presentation. I think it's fantastic, completely behind it. It's very strategically driven, and I commend you for that. Thank you very much. My question is stemming from something that is basically a key narrative that happened during the election period of Duterte, and the same thing happened with Leni and Marcos, which is basically the main thing about their narrative campaign is that we, or like yourselves and Leni at the time, is elitist, basically. So you know where I'm going. So you and Leni on the other side of the fence leading the elitist people, and Duterte representing the masses. So my question regarding this is if there's any integration within the plan to sort of bridge that gap so that we don't turn into the same silos that you represented in those graphs as well, and making sure that the technology for truth isn't just like kept within people with access to the truth. And that is not just like something that is exclusive to the Philippines either. It is happening all over the world, especially in the UK as well, as you've mentioned. So it's a very important thing to address, and I would just like to hear your thoughts and maybe the rest of the panel's thoughts about that as well. Thanks.
Yeah. You want me to? Yeah, I'll quickly do it because I think you should hear from Leloy on this particular one. Look, I've been called both communist and CIA at the same time. very, very hard to be both, right? And a lot of other names, right? So this is partly what social media empowers. I believe what it has done is created a cult of the amateur. Sorry, no offense, right? But, you know, I have great humility because I'm old enough to know what I don't know. And it's the reason why I ask questions all the time. And because journalists cannot be wrong, right? We're legally liable. I don't push any opinion or story until it's factually verified. So to your question, it's easy to play a populist card. This is what the technology empowers. But to stop everyone, to think slow, that's the platform we built, right? And it's built on top of Germany's open source. This is the Matrix Protocol chat app. Please try it. I actually have Maria's journal there. And let me give you an example. We rolled it out December 2023. We have a very simple 10 commandments. I guess we're Catholic, but no. So 10 points for content moderation. And we use, like now through Columbia University, we incubated an NGO called Roost, Robust Open Online Safety Tools, that has raised money and is rolling out content moderation to anyone building on the internet. It's called Osprey. You can try it. You can get it. The Element Matrix Rappler will be using that. Everyone can download this. But from December 2023 until today, we've only had to ban 3 accounts, right? Because when the rules are clear and people want to listen to each other because it is at such uncertain times, then we can have real conversations and develop our democracy together. Name calling is easy. Finding solutions, that's hard. And I think a democracy is the way to make that happen. The platform we built is open to everyone, right? It's open source. So, my dream is that it becomes a global federation of news organizations. And we are talking to global news groups. But as you said, as Patricia pointed out, building this is not cheap, right? That's all Rappler can build, an MVP. So the question is, what about those democratic governments? The EU is now talking about digital sovereignty. Germany is now talking about digital sovereignty. Put your money where your mouth is.
Thank you. Did anyone want to add to that? Okay,
Yeah,
Leloy first.
Quickly, there's a study by the economist Charmaine Ramos, and she showed that from 2016 to 2018, when the study was published, Duterte had spent more on social services than any other post-Marcos president. So of course, if he's spending on education, on health, people who hate him are seen as elitist. Now you combine that social spending with the kind of disinformation that Maria talks about, and you get a perfect storm of populist support. So how do you fight that? You fight them on both fronts. The new governments have to provide better social services than the Dutertes. And that's still a challenge for this current government. That's going to be a challenge when liberals or progressives take over. And then they have to fight the kind of information war that Maria has asked us to fight. And so we fight them on all these fronts. And I think if we do that, then we put up a significant resistance.
I'm with Leloy on this too. While I believe, yes, misinformation is dangerous, AI is not the future, I think it is absolutely necessary to also go on the ground, to talk to people. The core of journalism is not the apps. It's not even the platform. The core of journalism is the reporting, then the storytelling after. So if we invest in the journalism, in the time to find out what people think, not go online and figure out what people are saying because that's what they're saying in social media, to figure out that the person on the ground voted for Rodrigo Duterte because he believed that he sounded like his uncle. Some person voted for Rodrigo Duterte because he wanted people to die, because his cousins were drug addicts. Every person has a separate story. And I think it's incumbent on journalism, on us, to go on the ground, not pick and choose, but to go on the ground and find out what's happening. And that's what I think is necessary for all journalism. No, I am never optimistic, but I do believe that our job is to keep a record. I don't think journalism will end tyranny or save the world, but I think we're part of a community, and you put the record down and then you've done your job.
Thank you. Well said, all of you. All right, we have, please identify yourself first.
Yes, I'm Kathy Turingen Maurer. I'm a pediatrician in Atlanta, but I'm here in Germany because of my husband and my son. So I'd like to thank all of you for all that you do, and I'm quite excited to be here. The scrotum that I see there is not a scrotum, it's you having balls. Thank you. So actually my question is, will you run for the Philippine presidency?
Oh my God.
Yes?
No. You know, I do the best work as a journalist, I think, right? Like, and we do need good public servants, but I think they are there. We just have to encourage them. But look, the Philippines is going through this. I don't know if it's a purge. We're in the early stages of the anti-corruption protests, right? But here's some irony. President Marcos was the one who released the 15 contractors that the journalists began to investigate. And Rappler, Chis Escudero, our former Senate president, attacked Rappler because we went from that, right? So, look, I think you want us to stay journalists, although I really like policy, but dami naming gagawin eh. And you know, someone has to keep track of Pat's budget. No, I love her. By the way, what she doesn't tell you is she has 88 pages of footnotes. So that's a lot of reporting.
That was also very expensive to produce. So I think the proper practical advice for how to keep journalism alive is to pay for the journalism.
But, by the way, there's a German translation of her book and it's available downstairs. Okay, we have questions in the back there. Okay, please identify yourself, sir.
Yes, I'm Robert de Guzman. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Robert. He's my best friend right now.
You always use the term impunity, right? In a lot of your talks. My theory is this. Impunity only exists because there's no accountability. And it just simply goes on. So my question is, because you also use the term accountability, how do you make people like your admirers like Mocha Uson and Pinoy Blog be accountable for the lies that they spread? And the second thing is, looking at the other side of the coin, does it make any sense to come into a conversation with them?
I don't know the two accounts that you talked about. Remind me again, what are the two accounts? Mocha Uson are accountable. Okay, accountability. Look, impunity, when I talk about impunity, it's directly related to rule of law. And what's at stake globally right now is whether the old rules-based order still exists. Because the first question really is, there are countries that have invaded other nations, and we have watched, right? Like, so Ukraine, Alexandra Matviichik, Natalia Gumenyuk are coming to the Philippines in November. So that I think what we forget is that we live in countries where we don't have to actually pick up a rifle to defend our family, our friends, and our democracy. That's where we still are. But Ukraine doesn't have that option. I'm saying it's rule of law is dependent on the courage of the men and women who have to carry out the law, the judiciary. In the case of a multilateral global system, it is the coalition of nations that have created these laws, right? The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which we're now at the 80th year of the creation of the United Nations. Sorry, I pulled it broader, right? So I think that's our first step. But on something like this, look, the digital exhaust stays. And there is a period where you can file a case. We haven't done this in the Philippines, largely because we were pounded. I mean, literally in 2019, in 14 months, I received 11 arrest warrants. Starting in 2019, right? Which, by the way, also was a time when Rappler made money, because the business model, every time I got an arrest warrant, you all gave money to Rappler. Crowdfunding worked, right? And my sales team kept clapping every time that happened, but I kept saying, this is not sustainable. Let me answer your question directly, Mocha and all. When rule of law returns, and it does return, right? And the best example, I did this at the UN General Assembly, the opening of UNGA 80. I was one of 4 women who opened it. And I had to actually look to the Philippines because in March this year, the Philippines arrested a former president and put him on a plane to The Hague, right? Who would have thought? So the trial isn't over, but the families Patricia spoke with, Paring Bert is around in the back, right? He documented, he gave solace. It's far from over, but impunity can end with all of us. So that's my answer to you. And frankly, right now, be careful in every country around the world. This is a problem we all face. And you, Germany, you have to hold the line.
Okay, there's somebody in the back row. Your name, please?
Hello, Howie. This is
Hello,
Mariví
Mariví.
Soliven. I'm a writer, and you're all writers, obviously. So I wanted to ask a question, kind of like about craft, and especially now when this. I'm sorry, I'm not sure why there's a weird echo, but can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, in this, we're talking about social media and people have fights on Facebook and everything. And I noticed that certain words have become fraught. Like people police your language. You can't say genocide when it relates to Gaza. You can't say DEI anymore. Nonprofits in the United States are scrubbing their language of DEI. You can't say Antifa without being accused of, so as writers, how do you manage those words that have become suddenly charged with meanings that might be misinterpreted and used against you in ways that you did not intend?
Who wants to answer first? Go out.
So maybe I'll discuss the word genocide, right? So I think a vast majority of the experts on genocide have said that what's happening in Gaza is genocide. But in the news media, in the US news media, we're still not using the word unless it's been inside a quote that somebody else said. And I think that this isn't, it's certainly charged because of the nature of the act. But I think that I think that the news media defers to the Israeli narrative and doesn't use it because it hurts Israel's feelings, and they deny it, despite the fact that the vast majority of experts have said that it is. And frankly, I think that's a misstep, because the facts are already on the ground, and we have to trust what the experts who have been studying it said. So I think that's it's not exactly this is a choice that we make, but it is, we should be on the side of facts and experts and the truth, even if we're not.
You want to speak?
Yeah, okay. I'll use my moderator's privilege to try to answer that question. No, I recently wrote a story. This is a much more mundane example, though. I recently wrote a story where I used the phrase blind obedience, okay? And then I got pushback from an advocate of the blind, and they objected to my use of the word blind. All right, I didn't have to process that very much, because I thought of another word to use. I replaced it online with the word unquestioned obedience. So I think, I don't want to be censoring myself all the time about things like this. But if there is another word you can use, why not be more inclusive and more sensitive to all the other groups and people out there. That's just my attitude.
I want to jump in just a little bit and pick up from what Au said, which is, if you speak in the United States today, it's like the worst of the time of Duterte. It's not a chilling effect. It's Siberia, right? And that you are right in that. But so you just keep speaking. You know, I don't know whether it was a mistake or not, but I gave the 2024 commencement speech at Harvard, and I was attacked from all sides, right? But I said, you have to be, as a journalist, as precise with your words as possible. But, you know, I was called both anti-Semitic and anti-Islam. I was called, I guess you develop a thick skin in some of this. But if you look at the body of work, you just keep going. This is the best lesson I learned from the days of Duterte. That you may not know where you're going to wind up, but if you keep going according to your values, step by step, you will get there. And and by the way, we're not alone, right? Like Rappler, when the older folks, the four of us who are co-founders of Rappler, when we get tired, our young uns, they don't sleep. I mean, the median age in Rappler is 23 years old, and we are 63% women, not by design. We want more men. You know, come join us. See, you get to hang out with people like Patricia and Leloy.
I resigned in 2019.
Yeah.
She still hasn't accepted it. No, but I'd like to address that. I think it's important. I think words matter. I think language matters. But you don't throw them around. You think it through. You prove it. You don't just need a thick skin. You have to know that you've put in the work behind it. And all of us understand the power of language. Presidents are elected because of language. But even us journalists, we have to absolutely think it through. And we know what those words mean. We know what is self-defense. We know what is genocide. We know there is a world of difference between the two things. So if you're not a journalist, think it through. Don't throw the words around. But when you do, you stand your ground, if you believe it.
Salamat.
Molecular biology, right? Something like that? Biochemistry. Okay, biophysics. Iba yan.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was a wonderful discussion and the presentation. I am Richmond from Freiburg here in Germany, but originally from Marikina in the Philippines. I found interesting the question about impunity and accountability. And it was really amazing how you laid out the framework for fact-checking, for trying to counter this movement that is currently happening with generative AI, and how it works for the journalist side. Now, I have some questions on the receiving end. For us that partake in this, I would put it as a conversation between the journalists and the people that read or consume the news. So I have two concerns. One is, suppose we have addressed the issue on false or fictional news or information streaming in, and everything is now facts. One issue is that with the amount of facts coming in, how do we bookkeep everything? How do we hold, or how would you suggest that how do you suggest for us to be able to manage accountability for the simultaneous streams of controversies addressable at different time scales? Some issues take 10 years. Some issues take a week. Some issues maybe take just one session to call out that particular individual, and it will be addressed. But then there's that simultaneity of different time scales of issues. And it seems that we have this short-term memory for scandals or corruptions that are coming in, and we can't keep track anymore. And the second question, or the second concern, is that with impunity, it seems to be a current regress or a recurrence on a strategy wherein people in power can use facts and hyper nuance it or unnecessarily nuance it such that when they are doing something appearing to be inappropriate, it can be justifiable. But when it is other people, it is no longer justifiable. So, yes, there. So those are my two concerns on nuancing and how can we as the readers of news, of facts, or consumers of this information, how can we determine when nuancing is appropriate or inappropriate? And how can we keep track of all this streaming of information that are occurring at different time scales? There. Thank you.
So we were reminded we have a couple of minutes left.
I'll quickly answer. They're both extremely nuanced questions. The second question is easiest to answer, which is, and let's take someone like President Trump, right? Where what's good for him is not good for the opposition, right? Or it's called gaslighting, right? So we know this. We've lived through it. And so you have to call a spade a spade. If you're corrupt, you call the other person corrupt, right? Tim Snyder's book says the exact same thing. You attack the journalists so that people don't believe it, which leads to the answer to the second question. The end goal of all of this is not to make you believe one thing. It's to create chaos so you believe in nothing. Right? Because if we do not trust each other or do not have facts that anchor our shared reality, then we cannot act together as civil society, right? So power retains more power. This is why autocratic rulers gain more power. But how do you keep track of it, right? Build your communities of action. This is how Rappler survived. When we were under attack I was getting an average of 90 hate messages per hour. And many people, I think maybe until now, still believe I'm a criminal. Because hashtag arrest Maria Ressa trended in 2017, 2 years before I was actually arrested. Right? So this is like fertilizer. I guess what I'm saying here is we went to you in the physical world. I see you, eye to eye. You see me. And those were the communities that allowed us to survive. We wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. Patricia may not be here if you didn't help us. That's the goal, right? And then the journalists continue. We have to continue. But it's harder. In fact, the attacks against journalists for the last 20 years have increased as the quality of democracy has decreased.
All right, so we need to wrap up. I'm going to give a little kind of wrapping up statement. Maria, what you just reminded us is we're all facing a growing world of lies, right? And journalists are too puny a force to defeat it. So what needs to happen is we need to consolidate with all believers in fact. All of you, to form a universe of truth to fight this world of lies. So thank you, Maria, for the inspiration, for the challenges ahead. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Join us in the universe of truth. Maraming salamat. Mabuhay po kayong lahat. Mabuhay po ang Germany. Mabuhay po ang Pilipinas.